Good afternoon. I'm Ann Cleveland, the Executive Director of the Charleston Library Society, which was established in 1748. That's almost 275 years ago by 19 young men who were intellectually curious about everything, new ideas, new thoughts, new conversations. They were eager to stay abreast of whatever information was current and relevant. That tradition continues at the Library Society today. And today's program is about an entertaining book called Yo, Millard Fillmore that is celebrating its 30th anniversary. It has sold over 250,000 copies, and it's a perfect way to learn about all the presidents of the United States. I've actually known today's author, Will Cleveland, over his entire career. And I've followed the artist, Tate Nation, and the historian, Mark Alvarez, almost as long. They are all remarkably talented, bright, and whimsical collaborators who sometimes spend so much time having fun when they are brainstorming that I wonder how they get anything done. If you would like to buy a signed copy, please contact us or Buxton Books, which is at 160 King Street here on campus. We should all support our independent bookstore, but especially one that is carrying Yo, Millard Fillmore. If you know of a school that might be interested or a group of people who might be interested in listening to this program, again, please contact Dutch Reuter, who you just heard from, or me here at the Library Society, and we can put you in touch with Will and Tate. I hope that you'll bear with us tonight because this is the most complicated Zoom program we have launched since we learned about Zoom when COVID broke out 18 months ago. There are so many moving pieces with our wonderful guests from Charleston Day School, who you're about to meet, and Will in one room, them in another room, Tate in another room, Dutch in another room, me in another room. And we've got people visiting in our audience from all over the country. So we welcome you, we ask for your patience, but I know that just like our founding fathers 273 years ago, you are going to be enlightened and take away great information from today's program. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks.
And thank you very much. My name is Will Cleveland. With me is Tate Nation. Tate, if you take a wave. When I was in college, I hate to think how long ago, I read about the existence of memory tricks and memory systems that enabled people to have prodigious memories and to be able to remember huge amounts of information in terms of literature, poetry, and that kind of thing. And I was fascinated by how these memory systems worked. And then if you fast forward to the 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, when Ann and I and our children lived in Charleston, and we found ourselves, because of a family illness, on the road between Charleston and Columbia often. And as was the case then, my wife, Ann, was of the opinion that it would be wrong for children to have what do you call them? They're earbuds now, but earphones, and that we ought to have quality time in the car. On one of those excursions, as I sat in the deathly silence, making our way to Columbia, it occurred to me, as I'm sure it would to all of you, that a fun thing to do in a car like that would be to learn all the presidents of the United States. So when we got to Columbia, I got a list, and on the subsequent trips, our children and Ann and I made up this way of remembering how to remember the presidents of the United States. And I got so excited about it that when our children's friends would come by the house, I would take them into the living room and say, let me teach you the presidents. And they would invariably would learn the presidents in about 20, 25 minutes. And two things happened because of that. One, I thought this might make a pretty nice book. And two, my children's friends stopped coming by the house. So I'm here today with Tate to present our book to you. We wrote it 30 years ago, and we've been pleased with the reception. We've sold over 250,000 copies of the book, and have just had a new edition come out with President Biden as the 46th president. And so what I would like to do is we have incredibly brilliant students from the Charleston Day School that have volunteered to come and learn the presidents live before you. Can our audience see the class of students? You know, wave, guys, wave to everybody and say hello. Hello. Yeah, oh, hi is good. And what I'm going to do now is take our scholarly audience, not audience, but participants through the first 10 presidents of the United States. And I would ask that each of you look at the image, listen to what I say, and we'll go through them pretty quickly. Well, maybe not as quickly. There we go. The first president was George Washington. You can remember him because in front of the White House where the presidents live, there's a huge washing machine, big enough to wash a ton of clothes. And washing a ton would remind you of George, would remind all of you of George
Washington.
That's very good, but let's try it one more time. It would remind all of you of
George Washington.
That's right. And after George Washington, came John Adams. And if you look in the and pull up the lid of the washing machine and look inside, you'll see a bunch of nuclear atoms swirling around. And those atoms sound like John. Good. After John Adams was Thomas Jefferson. If you look at the atoms, they're being cooked, not by the guy who would normally do the cooking, which is the chef, but by the chef's son. And the chef's son is cooking up the atoms, and chef's son sounds a little bit like Thomas
Jefferson.
Good. After Thomas Jefferson was James Madison. Look what the chef's son uses to cook with. It's not gas or oil or wood. It's a mad son. And he's mad that he's stuck under there having to cook for the chef's son. But a mad son would remind you of James
Madison.
Good. After Madison was James Monroe. And look what happens when the mad son opens his mouth. Out comes a river of boiling water, and in it is Money rowing a boat. And Money Row would remind you of James
Monroe.
Good. Let me enlarge that picture a little bit. What dollar bill is it that's rowing the boat?
$5 bill.
And that lets you know that Monroe was what number president?
The 5th.
The 5th. That's exactly right. We're going to have a trick for you to remember every 5th president and know their number. Now I have another question for you. Do you see the guy that's on the $5 bill?
Yeah.
Who is that?
James Monroe.
That's a very good guess, but it's not James Monroe. You know who that is? That's my dad. And because I wrote the book, I get to do whatever I want. So I had my dad put on the $5 bill. And so that's where he came from. I just wanted you to know that. After Monroe, there was John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams is the son of John Adams. And you can remember that he comes after Monroe because the Money row in the boat is pushed into the dam and he can't stop. And the dam sounds a little bit like John Quincy. Great. After John Quincy Adams was Andrew Jackson. Look what's flowing over the dam. It's water, but what else is it? What cards are those?
Gas.
And that lets you know that the president after Adams was Andrew
Jackson.
Good. Then four of the Jacks are having an identity crisis, and they go to the four corners of a van with a bureau stuck on top. And Van Bureau would remind you of Martin.
Van Buren.
And after Martin Van Buren was William Henry Harrison. You can remember him because the van gets hair all over it. It becomes a hairy van. And a hairy van sounds like William Henry
Harrison.
Now, I hate to do this to you, but there's a really, really sad story that goes with William Henry Harrison. Do you know what it is?
No.
No, it's so sad. I hate to tell it to you, but William Henry Harrison, when he was sworn in as president, it was the coldest day there had ever been. And William Henry Harrison did not want an overcoat. And so he didn't wear an overcoat to his inauguration. And he spoke longer than any other president had ever spoken. He spoke for hours and hours. And you know what happened to him? He caught a cold and died 30 days later. He was only president for a month, but isn't that a very sad story?
Yes.
Yeah. After William Henry Harrison, and he came a lot quicker than he thought he was going to, was John Tyler. And the hair from the hairy van gets woven into a tie with a lure stuck to it. How many of y'all fish or fish with at all? Who fishes? Raise their hand. There you go. Got, oh yeah, almost everybody. Well, you know what you use to fish with is a lure, right? And when the lure is stuck to a tie, it stands for tie lure and John Tyler. Now, how old is it that boys are when they first start wearing ties to go to parties and dances and church and stuff? How old are they?
10.
Exactly right, 10. And if it wasn't 10, we're going to pretend it's 10. That lets you know that John Tyler was what number president?
10.
Right. All right, what we want to do now is do a quick review. What's in front of the White House?
A washing machine.
And how much clothes will it wash?
A ton.
And that stands for George.
Washington.
Good. What's swirling around inside the washing machine? Good. And who's cooking the atoms?
John Adams. The cook chef. The sun chef. The cook's son. The chef's son. The chef's son.
And that stands for,
Thomas Jefferson.
that's right. And what is the chef's son used to cook with for the heat?
A Madison. Madison.
Right. And that stands for James.
Madison.
Right. And then what's in the river coming out of the mad son's mouth?
Hot water and money. Money. $5 bills. $5 bills.
Right. What's the money doing?
Rowing a boat. Money row. So Monroe. James Monroe.
Yes. Exactly right. Exactly right. After Monroe, what does the Monroe get pushed into?
It's a dam. James Adams.
That's John, stands for John Quincy. Stands for-
Adams.
Right. Now, what's flowing over the dam?
Yes.
For Andrew who?
Andrew Jackson.
Very good. After Jackson was Martin Van Buren. And you know that because the Jacks are having an identity crisis. And with the van and the bureau would remind you of Martin.
Van Buren.
Good. And then was William Henry Harrison. How do you know that he comes after the van?
Harry.
Good. And what kind of story is that?
Sad.
Sad, is very sad. And then the hair from the van gets woven into what?
A tie.
And so and then how old do you have to be to wear that tie?
10.
And so Tyler was what?
The 10th president.
Very good. All right, we're going to let Tate carry you through the next 10. Nice
Okay.
job, by the way.
Yeah, I think they're doing great. This is fabulous, guys. Okay, well, as we know, Tyler was the 10th president because the tie and the lure, well, the tie and the lure now have polka dots all over them to tell you that James K. Polk was the next president. And so let's try that again. All those polka dots remind you of James K. Polk, right. Next came Zachary Taylor. If you had a polka dot tie with a lure and you wanted to get a matching polka dot suit, chances are the pants would be too long when you get it. So you'd have to go to a tailor to get cuffs put on the pants. And a tailor would remind you of Zachary
Taylor.
Right. Next came Millard Fillmore, and that's the guy that our book is named after. Strange name, but Millard Fillmore. The way we're going to remember him is the tailor has another part-time job after he leaves the tailor shop, where he works at a gas station, and he just takes the nozzle, and with as many cups as he has, he's filling more and more cups from the nozzle. And filling more, or fill more, reminds you of Millard
Fillmore.
That's right. Next came Franklin Pierce. Well, all of those cups that he just filled now get a hole pierced in the bottom of them with a needle, and piercing a hole in the bottom, Pierce reminds you of Franklin.
Pierce.
Right. And next came James Buchanan. Now the liquid that's dripping out of the liquid that he put in there, the liquid is dripping out of the pierced holes, is dripping into these cannons that are shaped like the letter U. And they're cannons, but they're shaped like a U. So U cannons remind you of James
Buchanan.
Buchanan. You say that like a U, Buchanan. How much do you suppose one of those cannonballs weighs for that?
15.
Yeah, see the cannonball closest to you? It says 15 pounds on it. And that lets you know that Buchanan was the 15th president. Next came Abraham Lincoln. Those U cannons are now surrounding a Lincoln log cabin, about to blow it to pieces. They're just going to have it surrounded. There's not a chance. And the Lincoln log cabin in the middle there reminds you of Abraham
Lincoln.
Right. And then next came Andrew Johnson. Look up on top of the Lincoln log cabin. It's a toilet, but a nickname for a toilet, another slang name, is a John. And next to the big John is the little guy that his son, and that's John's son, to remind you that Andrew Johnson was the president. John's son for Andrew?
Johnson.
Thank you. I kind of gave that one away, didn't I? Next came Ulysses S. Grant. Now the lids to the John and the John's son pop open, and squirming and squiggling to get out are these great ants. Pretty weird, huh? Great ants, if you said it repeatedly, great ant, great ant, great ant. If you said it a lot of times, pretty soon it would start sounding like Ulysses S.
Grant.
Let's try that again. Great ant, great ant, great ant. Sounds like
Grant.
Grant. Okay, good. Next came Rutherford B. Hayes. Well, those great ants now crawl away and climb up to the top of this haystack. And it's a huge haystack, and there's so much hay in the stack that they're reminded of Rutherford B. Hayes. And then came James Garfield. The way we're going to remember him is that haystack, you can see now, is way back in the back of a field where cigars are growing. It's not regular crops, but it's a field where cigars grow. And what would you call a field where cigars grow?
Cigar field.
Cigar field, and that reminds you of James?
Garfield.
Right. Okay, and we're going to say that there must be, well, how many cigars do you think come in a box?
20.
That's a pretty good guess. And we're going to say 20 cigars come in a box, and that reminds you what?
Of James Garfield.
That he was what number president?
20th.
20th. Okay, let's go back and review just a little bit. Okay, so there was a tie with a lure, and suddenly what kinds of shapes did it have all over it? Polka dots to remind you of James K. Polk, right. And if you had a polka dot tie and a suit that matched it, but the pants were too long on the suit, who can put cuffs on the suit? What's the guy's, what do you call it? He's a tailor, and that reminds you of Zachary Taylor. Right. And then the tailor has another job where he's working at a gas station doing what to all the cups with the nozzle? He fills more cups with the nozzle, and that Fillmore reminds you of Millard?
Fillmore.
Right. And then what happens to the bottom of each of those cups? What does someone do with a needle?
Pierce.
They pierce it, right? And that reminds you of Franklin.
Pierce.
Excellent. Then the liquid dripping out of each of those pierced holes is falling into what kind of?
Cannons.
Yeah, it's into a U cannon. And that reminds you of James Buchanan. And how much does a cannonball weigh?
15 pounds.
Perfect. Good job. Okay, then the Lincoln, oops, gave it away. The U cannons are now surrounding what? About to blow it up.
A log cabin.
What kind of a log cabin?
Lincoln log.
Lincoln logs, you know, the toys, Lincoln log cabin, about to blow it up. And that reminds you of Abraham.
Lincoln.
And what is on the roof on the top of the Lincoln log cabin?
Johnson.
Yeah, the John and the John's son for Andrew.
Johnson.
Yes. And the lids to the John and the John's son pop up. And what is squiggling and squirming to get out of them?
Great ants.
Great ants. And if you say that a whole lot of times, what does it sound like?
Grants.
Grant, right. Okay, and where do the great ants crawl? Where do they crawl away to?
Haystack.
Yeah, and all that hay reminds you of Rutherford B.
Hayes.
Right. Then where is that haystack?
Garfield.
In the back of a cigar field for James.
Garfield.
And how many cigars were there in a box?
20.
Okay, so that lets us know that he's the 20th president. Right. Thank you. Y'all did a great job on that.
One of the things that tried to do is not only make the books fun, but also informative. So on the opposite side of the pages that have the memory tricks are the biographies of the presidents, the etchings of the formal etchings from the government of the presidents, their time in office, their time on the planet. And I've never actually read any of these, but I recommend them to you highly once you've memorized all the presidents. These are just an example of 3 of them. Tate, as a result of the book, what happened to us next as publishing empire goes?
Well, I can think of 2 great things. One is Scholastic Book Fairs caught on to this because a number of education systems started reviewing the book and gave it some very, very nice complimentary reviews. And so Scholastic caught on to that, and Scholastic Book Fairs contracted with us to carry them. And then they ended up selling hundreds of thousands of copies as a 2-book set. Another thing that happened is we decided to do it as an ebook, and the year that we did that, USA Today published a story about the coolest ebooks of the year, and right in there with the top 10 coolest ebooks of the year, along with some very popular authors, David Sedaris and Caroline Kennedy. There was Millard Fillmore, and we were very complimented and thrilled with that honor.
You said a 2-book set. What was the second book?
Ah, glad you asked. Due to the popularity of Millard Fillmore, the schools, readers all across the country demanded that we come up with another book. And so Will and I put our heads together and decided that another wonderful thing for students and readers to learn would be the capitals of every state. So we came out with a book, Yo Sacramento. And Will, do you want to explain why we came up with that title first of all?
Well, yeah, and I want to just take a minute so that our perfect students sort of understand the theory of these memory tricks. What's going on is that if you have 2 things that you want to remember go together, like that John Adams follows George Washington. If you want to remember that, then what you do is think of something that sounds like Washington, a picture in your mind that sounds like Washington. And then you think of another image that sounds like atoms. And then the trick is to put those in the same picture. And so what we did is we had a washing machine, sounds like Washington, and we had nuclear atoms that sound like atoms. And the trick is to put them in the same picture. So we have the atoms swirling around inside the washing machine. And so what we're going to do now, take a few minutes, is the president shows you how you link things, long lists of things. Sometimes you don't want to remember a long list. You want to remember a series of pairs of two things that go together, like the states and their capitals. And so what we're going to do is take you through and show you how you would use your own imagination to come up with memory tricks to help you memorize things.
How about if I do the first 5, Will? I'll do 5, then you do 5. How
That
about that?
sounds good.
Okay. Well, we'll start with Jackson, Mississippi. Once again, we've got the jacks from a deck of playing cards. There's a jack, and there's next to him is his little son. And the jack is doing fine with his, but the jack's son is has a little bit of a mishap there, and he's missing a sip of tea and spilling it all over himself. And so to say that a jack's son misses a sip of tea, if you put those two things in the same mental image, then you'll remember Jack's son misses a sip of tea is the way to remember Jackson, Mississippi. Let's do another one. Little Rock, Arkansas. Here we've got Noah's Ark, and you can see because it's got pairs of every kind of animal on there. And the ark is just showing you that he's got a sawhorse there, and he's got lots of rocks, and some of them are big rocks and some of them are little rocks. But he's showing you that he can saw the little rocks, and that ark can saw a little rock. Helps you remember Little Rock is the capital of Arkansas.
Tate, you drew this illustration, and I've just noticed something for the first time.
What's that?
That there's a pair of rocks, big rocks, over on the side. What happens to them? Do they get to make the trip with Noah, or are you just leaving them out?
That's why you never see big rocks in the world, because they make. Oh yeah, you do. I guess.
Let's go to Kentucky.
Okay. Okay, next is Frankfort, Kentucky. I'm a Kentucky boy originally, lived in Charleston for more than 40 years, but Kentucky boy. Most people would think that if they didn't know the capital, probably would think that Louisville was the capital of Kentucky, or maybe Lexington. But it's actually a small town between those two cities, and it's called Frankfort. The way we're going to remember that is there is a fort made out of franks, or hot dogs, franks, and the Frank fort is surrounding and protecting a giant canned turkey. You see the turkey in the middle there, and the canned turkey sounds like Kentucky, and Frank Fort would remind you that the capital is Frankfort.
Tate, I've just noticed, we're having this debate about how the South Carolina state flag ought to look. And I see the flag that you have over here in Frankfort is quite an interesting use of artwork. Thank you.
I would be pretty honored if they actually adopted that as their as the state flag. Let me know if you have any connections there.
Well, thank you.
Okay, the capital of Nebraska is Lincoln. Well, everybody recognizes this guy here. It's Abraham Lincoln, and he's opening a gift that it was given to him. And inside the package is a key. It's a brass key, and it's brand new. So look how it sparkles. It's a new brass key, which sounds like Nebraska, being opened by Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln helps you remember that Lincoln is the capital of Nebraska. All right, let's do this one. Springfield, Illinois. Well, and some people say Illinois, but I guess technically it's Illinois. Depends on who you ask. There's a field full of springs here, and a farmer's field where springs are growing, but they don't feel good. They're all kind of sickly right now. And you see some of them are saying, I don't feel good, my throat hurts, kind of got a fever, and I'm gonna be sick. So they're making all kinds of ill noises, and ill noises in the spring field sounds like Springfield, Illinois.
Good.
Will, why don't you take some?
Let me, I was born in the state of New York, and I'm pleased as the capital of New York State is Albany. And you can remember that because we have here a new yak. The yak was a present to the owl and the bunny. And an owl and a bunny would remind you of Albany. and the New Yak sounds like New York. And this is one of my favorites. In fact, we named the book Yo Sacramento after this fellow. This is a dairy cow who likes to go to national parks and collect souvenirs and mementos. And he puts them in his sack. And when he has enough, then he will call home. And so the way you remember that Sacramento is the capital of California is you think, with a sack of mementos, the cow will phone you. We had a good time coming up with that one. Then there's Helena, Montana. This is my wife's favorite. And you can remember that Helena is the capital of Montana because there's a heel and a man tanning. Kind of wonder what he did to deserve that. But a heel and a man tanning would remind you that Montana's capital is Helena. Then is the capital of New Jersey is Trenton. And what we have is there's the Train 10 that provides the New Jerseys for the football team. And if you think of the Train 10 and the New Jerseys being distributed, you'll remember the capital of New Jersey is Trenton. And then finally, the capital of Florida is Tallahassee. What we have here are two Lassies, you know, like the dog, the collie's named Lassie. But one is a taller Lassie than the other one. And the taller Lassie is standing on a floor of dots. And a floor of dots would remind you of, team, remind you of what?
Florida.
Good. And what is the capital of Florida?
Tallahassee.
Very good. Tate, why don't you take them, see if our brilliant students remembered any of those.
Yeah, let's go back and let me give you a little quiz and see how you do on this for recall. So the Jack and the Jack's son were having some tea, and one of them had a little mishap. Who can tell me what that was? Yes?
Jackson, Mississippi.
Right. And how did you remember that? What was the picture clue? The Jackson
and Mississippi.
he misses the tea, misses a sip of tea, right? Okay, so that tells you that Jackson was the capital of Mississippi. Next, what is it that an arc can saw? Who can tell me? You can just speak out loud. Go on and shout it out.
Rocks.
Big rocks or what?
Little rocks.
Little rocks. So the capital, what state is Little Rock the capital of?
Arkansas.
Right, right. Okay, what is guarding a giant can of turkey?
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt, yeah. So what state is Frankfurt the capital of?
Kentucky.
Kentucky, because of the canned turkey, right? Who just received a gift and it was a brand new sparkling new brass key?
Abraham Lincoln.
Lincoln. So that tells you Lincoln was the capital of what state?
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Exactly. Good. What sounds are the springs that are growing in a field? What kind of sounds are they making? Happy sounds? Good?
Illinois.
Ill noises, yeah. And so that tells you that Springfield is what capital?
Illinois.
Right, right. What are the two animals that are riding on a new yak?
Owl and a bunny.
Okay, and so put the name of the city and the capital and the state together and tell me what that is.
New York.
Okay, and what's the capital?
Albany, New York.
Right, excellent, good job. What will the cow do after she's visited national parks and monuments? What will the cow do? Stop and do?
Phone you.
Okay, so tell me.
Cow will phone you.
California. Okay, so what is the capital of California?
California.
Yeah, and let's see. What does she have that she's holding when she?
Sacramento.
Right, and that's Sacramento, California. What are being passed out from train number 10? train 10?
New Jersey's.
New Jersey. So what's the capital of New Jersey?
Trenton.
Right, right. And then what are the shapes all over the floor that the lassies are standing on?
Polka dots.
And so that's called a what kind of a floor? A floor of
Polka dots.
dots, okay. And floor of dots sounds like,
Florida.
okay. And what's the capital?
Tallahassee.
You did a great job, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Good deal.
All right, I have a question for the class. Before I do that, Tate and I love coming to schools. We've been to a bunch of them all over the place. And so I just put up in an awfully self-serving way, our contact information. If anybody would like more of what you've seen, but in front of your classroom. We did a Zoom session earlier today with one of the local schools, the Cooper School, and found that all this technology works pretty well. But what I want to do is stop sharing so that I can see all of you better. And there we go. This is directed to the class. Who is the 15th president of the United States?
Yeah, you can.
Who is it?
You can.
And how much do the Buchanan balls weigh?
15 pounds.
Great. Now I'm going to ask you a little tougher one. I'd like to know who the 20th president is.
Garfield.
Who? Say it again.
Garfield.
Perfect. Now this is one we didn't learn. Who's the 17th president?
Oh, Jackson or Johnson.
How did you remember? That's correct. How did you remember Johnson?
The Johns on top of the Lincoln log, so I knew that was after Johnson.
That's right. If somebody asks you the number of any president, and you know 17 is 15 was Buchanan, and the Buchanans are aimed at the Lincoln Log House. So Lincoln is 16, and on top of the Lincoln Log House is the John Son. That's 17. Or you can come in it backwards. You said who was the 20th president?
Garfield.
And who was the president before Garfield?
Hayes.
Exactly right. And what's crawling up the haystack?
Great ants.
And where do they come from?
Johnson.
And so you can get to Johnson either by starting with 15 or by starting with 20. Tate, did you have any follow-up questions?
Well, let me try a couple here. What happens to the bottom of all the cups that Millard? Yeah, they get pierced, and that was who followed Millard Fillmore, right? What were the shapes on the tie and the lure?
Polka dots.
Okay, and so we know that Ty Lure was the 10th president, so the shapes on there came after that. So Polk was the 11th president, correct? Yeah, okay. Let's see. What is the chef's son using to as heat?
Medicine.
Yeah. So this really did stick with you, didn't it? Okay, good. How about who was the 5th president? Think of a 5.
Oh, Monroe.
Right. And how did you remember that? Excellent. Good job. Good job. Yeah.
I think that Tate, we've demonstrated the books to the best of our ability. Why don't we see if there are any questions before we wrap it up?
I'd like that. We love questions. Does anyone out there, if you have a question, please do us a favor. I know we've got people watching from all around the country. And so if you have a question, if you could send it into Dutch, also with your name, just put where you're writing from.
Yeah. Yes. So like Tate just said, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to put them right in the chat. But I'd like to know what was one of the hardest presidents or one of the hardest states to come up with a mnemonic device for?
You want me to answer that one, Will?
Sure.
Or do you have, if you've got one you'd like to comment, please do.
Well, I'll see if mine's as good as yours, and then, but you go
Can't
first.
be. Lots of luck with that. Okay. I would have to say one of the trickiest things was Grover Cleveland served 2 terms non-sequentially. He was president number 22, and then Benjamin Harrison came after him, and then he ran again, and so he was number 24. So it's kind of tricky to come up with very distinct images that wouldn't make you confused and actually totally skip over Benjamin Harrison. So that posed some challenges. And we had the very same issues with 2 President Bushes and 2 President Adams, both father and son. So we had to come up with names where you didn't just totally jump over a whole lot of presidents. I guess that's probably would be my best answer to that. How about you, Will? What were your thoughts?
No, I think that I don't have any that are more difficult than those. I think that's a good summary. One thing I did want to, I enjoy telling this story. We've gotten a number of accolades from sources. The one I like the best, the one I've taken the most pride in, has to do with 10 years ago. Anne gave me a membership in the a creative writing class being offered here at the Library Society. And I went to the first session, and there were 6 or 7 of us in this seminar type of deal. And the professor was, the teacher was Brett Lott, a #1 New York Times selling author who's a professor at the College of Charleston, who agreed to come and teach our class. And he started with the person next to me. And he says, I want you to tell us your name. I want you to tell us what experience you have with creative writing, so we can get a feel for our class here. Well, the person next to me said, well, when I was in college, I won 3 or 4 awards for creative writing and outstanding contribution to literature. And as she was saying this, Brett was saying, all right, okay, fine, let's move on. And went to the next person, and the next person said, well, I've actually been published in 3 literary, and about to complete that sentence. Brett said, oh, okay, fine, let's move on. And he showed that he was really anxious to get past our introductions of ourselves and into the substance of the seminar. And we went around the room, and everybody in that room had done something of some note, except for me. And so when he got to me, and he said, I said, I'm Will Cleveland, and I years ago I was traveling from Columbia to Charleston, and I thought of this way of remembering the presidents. And he said, all right, come on, let's get on with it. I said, well, we turned it into a book, and it was published, and we've sold over 250,000 copies. And Brett Lott stopped. And he looked at me and he said, yo, Millard Fillmore. Still now I get choked up thinking about it. He said, yo, Millard Fillmore. I said, yeah. And he said, you wrote yo, Millard Fillmore? I said, yes, I did. And he said, that book was the favorite of my family and my children growing up. We got so many hours of pleasure out of that. It's just wonderful. And all I could think to say was, it's so nice to meet a fan.
Will, we got a question, and Tate, we got a question for both of you from Phoebe in New York. Would like to know, Will, who is your favorite grandchild? And Tate, which mnemonic device was your favorite to draw?
Oh, Will, I want to hear your answer.
I've got 6 wonderful grandchildren. And each one of them has abilities that surpasses the next. And so I confine my accolades to them when we're one-on-one, and I can explain to them how much better they are than the rest of them.
Good answer. Good answer.
But
Very
my heart goes out to Miss Phoebe, who asked that question from New York.
My answer, your question was, which was my favorite mnemonic illustration to do? Boy, oh boy. I mean, I was really pleased with a lot of them. And there's an interesting process in that, and that is Will and I kind of put our heads together. Will comes up with typically the original idea, and sometimes I would just go, you know, I can't think of a great way to illustrate that. Let's tweak it a little bit or whatever. That's just an aside, but I would have to say one of my favorite illustrations was in Yo Sacramento, and it was for the state of Tennessee. And we didn't cover this one, but it is there is a tent floating at sea on a raft, and the tent at sea, and there are boxes of meat veal on the tent, and they're falling out and toppling into the water, and there's sharks circling the tent, and they're chewing on or gnashing the veal. So the sharks are gnashing veal from the tent at sea to tell you that Nashville is the capital of tent at sea. It's just a favorite illustration of mine. You'd have to look it up. So go buy the book. It was a fun one. But I've got to say, almost all of them in both books are ones that I'm really proud of.
That's Tate's liking that illustration reminds me of the heroes in Spinal Tap wanting to do an opera on Jack the Ripper.
And just so everyone knows, I did just put the link to purchase a book from Bucks and Books back in the chat. They do have signed copies that you can purchase that have both Will and Tate's signature, which is great. And so we have one more question coming from New York again. Are you considering a new book?
No, well, we're not. We had thought about perhaps the books of the Bible, but decided that was not a subject that warranted sort of all this flip humor that we think was cool and right for the other 2 books. Not that, anyway, the answer is no. What I would like to do, and I've been remiss in doing it, is I can see the places where people are coming from, and there are people all over the country. Plus, can't believe this, one person from Sri Lanka is on the session with us. So what I would appreciate is everybody giving a big national applause to our very, very astute class from the Charleston Day School, and give them a
Thank you, guys.
Well,
and thanks to the Charleston Library Society for letting us have and do this.
Yeah, well, we here at the Library Society just want to thank both you, Will, and you, Tate, and you, smart students in our French room, for coming in and being a part of this evening. This has been a lot of fun. Like Will and Anne both mentioned, if anyone knows of anyone who would be interested in a presentation like this one, please get in contact with us. Will and Tate put up their information, or you could always just call us here at the Library Society, and we'll be able to get you in touch. So just thank you again, and everybody have a great night, and we'll see you soon.